The voice in the dark. The message came as a whisper through static dot at first. No one believed it was real. The comms officers aboard the Ardent Hope, a civilian cargo hauler crossing the Helian Drift, dismissed it as background interference. But when the whisper repeated, stronger this time, it carried words. To anyone listening, this is Kiraval, colony of Mirrodin 4. We are under attack. Please help, then silence. The Ardent Hope was not a warship. It was a freighter crewed by 30 souls, most of them workers. Their job was to haul ore and supplies between the outer colonies. No one wanted to stop. No one wanted to get involved, except one man, Elias Varric, ex-soldier of the Terran Defense Force, sat in the co-pilot's chair when the call came through. His hands clenched the armrests as the faint, broken words echoed again in the cabin. He knew desperation when he heard it. He'd heard it in the screams of villages during the hour. Orion conflicts. That's no pirate hoax, Elias muttered. His voice was gravel, worn by years of command shouts and smoke. That's real. The captain, a lanky Valen named Dorotesh, flicked his quills back nervously. Even if it is real, we cannot divert. The drift is unstable. My ship is. No war vessel human. Someone out there is dying, Elias shot back. You want that on your conscience? The crew looked away. Some were human, most were alien. None wanted to gamble their lives. Elias leaned closer to the comms console, eyes narrowing. Kiraval. I know that name. The Valen captain huffed. An outpost world. Agricultural. Not worth the risk. But Elias's mind was racing. He'd heard of Kiraval before, an allied colony, a place where humans and the insectoid sheltry species lived side by side. Farmers, families, people who had no defenses against an organized assault. Elias stood. Set a course. Now. The captain hissed, indignant. You do not command me. Elias's hand fell on the warm grip of the sidearm at his belt. He didn't draw it. He didn't have to. His eyes carried the weight of battlefields, the promise that he'd do what was necessary. Either you turn this ship, Elias said quietly, or I take the helm and do it myself. For a long moment, the bridge held its breath. The hum of the engines, the flicker of the stars. Then, slowly, reluctantly, the Valen captain tapped the course corrections. Kiraval. The ship's computer confirmed. Elias exhaled, but his chest was tight. He remembered something else. A promise he had made, years ago when he'd walked away from the uniform. Never again. Never another war. And yet, here he was walking straight back into one dot as the Ardent Hope jumped into. Faster than light travel, the whispering message echoed one last time. Please. They are burning us alive. The crew said nothing, but their faces were pale, their eyes wide. Elias Varric knew, with bone-deep certainty, that he had just dragged them into Hell. And he also knew if anyone touched those colonists' humanity, would answer with fire. Asterisk ashes on the wind. When the Ardent Hope dropped out of FTL, the stars were wrong. Smoke trailed into space like black rivers, drifting from the blue-green sphere of Kiraval. The planet's orbital docks were burning wreckage. Shattered rings of metal floated in silence. The crew gasped. One of the young mechanics vomited into his hands. Elias just stared, scanned for survivors. He ordered. The sensors chirped, but the news was worse than silence. Signals flared ships still in orbit, not debris, not ruins. Armed vessels circling. The planet like vultures. The crew recognized the insignia at once. They hissed, cursed, recoiled in fear. The Dravari Syndicate, raiders, slavers, not pirates, but something far worse, organized warlords who sold entire populations. They're still here, whispered a Sheltry navigator. His chittering voice shook. If they see us, they've already seen us. Elias cut in. Sure enough, Two blips broke off from the Syndicate flotilla, angling toward the freighter. The Ardent Hope had no guns. No armor, no chance. Run! The captain shouted. Elias's mind raced. If they fled, the Syndicate would chase them, board them, enslave them too. If they stayed, they died. But if they could get down to the planet, he slammed a fist on the console. Drop us into atmosphere, now! The Valen captain screeched. That is suicide. Elias grabbed the controls himself. Then let's die on the ground with them. The freighter dove. The Syndicate ships gave chase, weapons spitting fire. The hull screamed as plasma seared. Past out the crew panicked. Dorotesh cursed Elias every second. But Elias kept his eyes fixed forward. The planet rushed up to meet them, forests, rivers, smoke pillars, raising where cities burned. Brace! The freighter slammed through atmosphere. Heat shields glowed white-hot. The pursuing ships broke off, unwilling to risk a crash dive. The Ardent Hope finally skidded into a clearing. The landing struts snapped. Metal screamed. Sparks lit the forest. But they were alive. For now, the crew stumbled from the wreck, coughing on smoke. Above them, the sky glowed red from orbital fire. And then they saw them, survivors. A group of colonists stumbled from the tree-lined humans and Sheltry alike. Their clothes were scorched, their eyes hollow. Children clung to their parents. One stepped forward, a Sheltry female, tall and slender, her chitin cracked. She carried a child in her arms. Her mandibles clicked weakly as she spoke. You heard us, she whispered. You came. Elias met her gaze. We heard. The survivors wept, some falling to their knees. The crew looked to Elias, fear in their eyes. They hadn't signed up for this, but Elias knew there was no turning back. The Syndicate would come for them. And when they did, humanity's answer would be waiting. Asterisk, the hunt begins. The clearing stank of smoke and scorched metal. The Ardent Hope lay crippled, her hull split like a gutted beast, but her reactor core still hummed faintly. Elias knelt in the dirt, running his hands over blackened soil, where plasma bolts had scorched the ground. They'll track us, he muttered. His voice was low, steady, like a soldier falling back into an old role he had sworn to abandon. They won't stop until every last one of you is chained or burned. The survivors huddled together, too exhausted to speak. There were maybe 30 of them, a mix of humans and Sheltry. The Sheltry woman, who had stepped forward earlier now, stood at Elias's side. She was tall and willowy, her chitin plates cracked from burns. She carried herself with quiet dignity, though her mandibles clicked nervously. My name is Serenia, she said. I was a healer, before this. Her large, multifaceted eyes looked at the wrecked freighter, then at the sky streaked with fire. You risked much to come here. Elias gave her a sharp look. You're welcome. Now we need to make sure it wasn't for nothing. He turned to the crew. Many looked ready to mutiny. Dorotesh, the Valen captain, was trembling with fury. You've doomed us all, human. We should have fled. Fled to where? Elias snapped. They'd have hunted us through the drift. You think the Syndicate leaves witnesses? Number. One answered. The silence itself was answer enough. Elias rose to his full height. Listen, they're coming. I don't know how many. I don't know how soon. But I do know this, if we stay in the open, we die. If we split up, we die. If we panic, he let the word hang, we die. He gestured to the survivors. We dig in. We make this forest our cover. We set traps, hide the children, and we fight smart. Not like soldiers, like hunters. We bleed them, slow them, make them think twice before stepping into these trees. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. None were warriors. But Elias's voice carried a weight they couldn't ignore. Serenia's mandibles clicked softly. You have fought them before. Elias's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. Asterisk the forest refuge by nightfall. Elias had driven them into the tree line. They worked under his barked commands, gathering branches, stripping bark, digging shallow pits lined with sharpened wood. He showed them how to use vines as snares, how to coat stakes with engine coolant to poison wounds. This is barbaric, muttered the Valen captain. It's survival, Elias shot back. Children were hidden in a hollowed ridge near the river, guarded by the Shaltree healers. The able-bodied carried wreckage from the freighter deeper into the forest, pieces of plating turned into makeshift barricades. Serenia moved among the wounded with calm efficiency, her slender hands glowing faintly as she applied bioluminescent poultices. Elias noticed her exhaustion, the way her steps faltered when she thought no one was watching. You're pushing too hard, he told her. Her mandibles twitched in something like a smile. If I stop, they die. If I keep going, maybe they live. That is worth the pain. Elias looked away, unsettled. He had seen too many medics break under less. Yet here was an alien woman, her world in flames, still holding everyone together. It reminded him of Earth, of the nurses who stayed behind in crumbling war zones, of the stubborn human refusal to surrender hope. Signs of the hunt. The first sign of pursuit came at dawn. A scout party of syndicate raiders moved through the forest, 6 figures in jagged black armor, their rifles gleaming red. Elias lay prone in the undergrowth, with 2 frightened colonists at his side. He whispered instructions, his breath slow. Steady, wait for my mark. The raiders advanced, careless, laughing in their guttural tongue. They thought they were hunting prey. Elias's hand clenched. Now, asterisk, the snare snapped. Vines whipped around armored legs, dragging 2 raiders into spiked pits. Screams cut through the trees. Elias fired once, clean and precise, dropping a third. The colonists panicked, shooting wildly. Plasma bolts burned bark and dirt, but somehow one struck home, punching through another raider's chest. The last 2 broke and fled, howling into their combs. Elias swore, they'll bring more. The shattered village later that day. Elias and Serenia scouted further north. The forest thinned into rolling hills. Smoke curled above the horizon. They came upon what had once been a village. Wooden homes, simple farming plots, irrigation channels dug by human hands. Now it was ash. Bodies lay where they had fallen farmers. With their tools still clutched, Shaltree mothers curled around their children. Serenia fell to her knees. A keening sound tore from her mandibles, raw grief that made Elias's chest ache. He placed a hand on her shoulder, awkward, unsure. Sorry, they burned them alive, she whispered. Her eyes glistened with bioluminescent tears. They did not even fight back. Elias's jaw clenched until it hurt. That's what they do. Fear is their weapon. They think if they burn enough villages, no one will resist. Serenia looked up at him. And will you resist? For a moment, Elias saw his reflection in her alien eyes. He saw himself not as the soldier he had been, but as the man he had tried to become after the war, quiet, hidden, tired of blood. But he also saw the children hiding in the ridge. He saw the pleading eyes of the survivors who had looked to him, not their captain, for orders. Yes, Elias said finally. I'll resist. The first raid that night, the syndicate came in force. Dozens of armored raiders, their ships landing. At the forest edge. The colonists trembled. Dorotesh nearly fled. Elias rallied them with a voice that cut through fear. They think we're weak. They think we'll break. Show them they're wrong. Show them what happens when you corner. Humans, show them what happens when you burn our homes. The first wave crashed into the trap snares. Pits, barricades. Plasma fire lit the night. Colonists fought with scavenged rifles, bows, even sharpened poles. Shaltri warriors leapt from trees, their chitin blades flashing. Elias moved like a ghost, firing, stabbing, vanishing into the smoke. He wasn't a soldier anymore. He was something older, primal. A hunter dot, and for the first time, the syndicate faltered. But then an explosion tore through the barricades. Syndicate heavy troopers stormed through, their weapons blazing. Colonists screamed. Elias spun to see Serenia dragged down by one of the armored brutes. No! He roared. He charged, firing until his rifle clicked empty. He smashed into the brute with raw fury, blade against armor, teeth bared like a beast. He killed it barely. But when he turned, Serenia was gone. The syndicate had taken her. Asterisk the wrath of the syndicate. The forest was silent after the battle, but it was the wrong kind of silence. It wasn't victory. It was absence. Serenia was gone. Elias stood in the blackened clearing, smoke curling around him, his rifle hanging slack in his hands. The ground was littered with syndicate dead, their jagged armor cracked by traps and fury. Colonists tended their wounded. Children cried softly in the shadows. But all Elias could see was the spot where Serenia had been dragged away. The claw marks in the dirt. The blood trail ending where a shuttle had lifted into the night. He had promised himself, years ago, that he wouldn't go back, that he wouldn't fight wars again, that he wouldn't lead people into hell. But now, his chest burned with rage, hotter than any plasma bolt. He had failed her dot, and he would get her back. The enemy within the trees. The next night, Elias slipped into syndicate territory with a small band of colonists. They moved like shadows, striking supply camps, cutting throats, vanishing before alarms could sound. Fear began to spread among the raiders. The syndicate were used to cowed slaves, not organized resistance. They whispered of a ghost in the trees, a human who fought like a demon, who could not be killed. But Elias wasn't a ghost. He was flesh and blood. Every wound hurt. Every scream haunted him. And every day Serenia remained in their hands, gnawed at his soul. He interrogated prisoners when he could. Brutal, fast, efficient. He learned the syndicate were holding captives. In the ruins of a city near the coast. Hundreds humans and Shaltri alike. That's where Serenia would be. He swore to bring them all back or die trying division in the ranks. Colonists looked at him differently now, not just as a man, but as a symbol. The children whispered his name with reverence. The crew of Vaun. The ardent hope, once ready to mutiny, now followed his orders without question. All except Doro single quotes Tesh. The Valen captain pulled Elias aside one night, his quills bristling. This is madness. You are making them believe we can win. But we cannot. We must abandon this world. Flee while we can still breathe. Elias glared at him. And leave them? The families in cages? The healers in chains? They are not our responsibility. Dorotesh hissed. You dragged us here against our will. I will not die for your human sentiment. Elias's hand shot out, grabbing the alien by the collar. He hauled him close, his voice low and venomous. Then crawl back to your ship and hide. But if you speak of leaving again in front of them, if you dare poison their hope, I'll put you in the ground myself. Dorotesh stared into his eyes, and for the first time, the Valen captain looked truly afraid. Into the fire Elias led the strike on the coastal city at dawn. The ruins loomed, shattered spires jutting against a blood-red sky. Syndicate banners hung from broken walls. Patrols stalked the streets, armored boots crunching over Ashdod Elias, and his fighters crept through the rubble. Every heartbeat was a drum, every shadow a threat. They struck fast. Ambushes in alleyways, mines hidden under corpses, fires set to choke streets with smoke. Colonists fought with desperation, Shaltree warriors with chitin blades and hissing war cries. Elias moved at the center of it all, his rifle barking death, and then he saw her, through the smoke, chained in a courtyard with other captive Sirenia. Beaten, bloodied, but alive. Their eyes met. Her mandibles clicked once, a sound of recognition. Relief. But before Elias could reach her, the ground shook. A syndicate war beast lumbered into view, massive, plated in metal, its maw belching fire. Behind it marched lines of armored soldiers. Far more than Elias had expected. It was a trap. The cage, the battle, was chaos. Colonists screamed, cut down by plasma fire. Shaltree warriors were crushed under the beast's claws. Elias fought like a man possessed, carving his way toward Sirenia, but the numbers were too great. A blow from behind dropped him to his knees. A rifle butt slammed into his skull. Stars burst across his vision. He collapsed beside Sirenia, blood dripping from his brow. Chains closed around his wrists. Sirenia's voice was faint, broken. "You came. I knew you would." Elias forced his eyes open, meeting hers. "I'm not done yet." Then darkness swallowed him. When he woke, it was to the stink of rust and rot. He was in a cage, metal bars burning with faint energy. Around him, dozens of colonists huddled in the gloom. Children whimpered. Old men coughed. And across the row of cages, Sirenia lay chained, her chitin cracked, her light dim. A syndicate overseer stalked the aisle, whip crackling with electricity. His voice was a growl. "Break their hope," he snarled to his guards. "Break their bodies. Tomorrow they'll be sold like the cattle they are." Elias gripped the bars, his teeth bared. He was bleeding, bruised, beaten. But his eyes burned with something the syndicate had not expected. Rage, not just his own. Humanity's. And when that rage was unleashed, it would burn the galaxy. Chains. And shadows. The cages rattled with every movement of the prison ship. The syndicate vessel was a hulking monstrosity of steel and cruelty, its decks echoing with the cries of captives dragged from world to world. Elias sat hunched in the corner of his cell. His wrists were raw from the energy shackles. His face was bruised, his ribs ached, but his mind was sharp, alive, calculating. Across the aisle, Sirenia lay on her side. Her breathing was shallow, her chitin cracked where the guards had beaten her. Yet when her eyes found his, there was a spark faint. Fragile, but there. "You should have left," she whispered, mandibles trembling. Elias shook his head. Not a chance. He scanned the rows of cages. Humans, Shaltree, even a few other species, their eyes hollow, spirits broken. The syndicate wanted them docile before selling them. Wanted them too afraid to resist. Elias had seen this before. On battlefields, in occupied towns. He knew what fear could do, and he knew how to turn it into fire. The overseer, the prison's master, was a Dravari brute named Korath, his armor adorned with skulls, his face tattooed with jagged lines of ownership and dominance. He enjoyed walking the rows of cages, whip in hand, mocking the captives. "You are nothing," he growled one day, pacing like a predator. "Property. Soon you will fetch a fine price in the slave markets of Yaraik. Be grateful. We could have left you in the ashes of your pitiful colony." He paused at Elias's cage, sneering. "And you, the human, you killed many of my men. Perhaps I will keep you for sport. Humans last long in the arenas." Elias met his eyes, unflinching. "Come in here and try me." Korath's laugh was a guttural bark. He slammed his whip against the bars, sending sparks skittering across Elias's skin. Pain seared through his body, but Elias didn't scream. He refused. That defiance spread like a ripple. Some of the colonists lifted their heads for the first time in days. Korath noticed, and his amusement turned to a snarl. He stormed off, barking orders to increase punishments. Elias smiled through the pain. One spark was all it took. Asterisk. Planting seeds in the darkness of night cycles. Elias whispered Dot to the humans. Remember Earth. We've beaten worse than this. We don't bow. We don't break. To the Shaltri. Your ancestors hunted beasts twice the size of these slavers. That blood is still in you. Don't let them chain it. To Serenia. They want us to believe we're finished. We're not. Not while we're breathing. Slowly, the broken eyes of the captives began to light with something dangerous. Hope. He showed them tricks, how to loosen shackles by twisting them at the right angle, how to count guard rotations, how to use scraps of food trays as makeshift. Blades. A boy no older than 12 whispered, but they'll kill us if we try. Elias leaned close, voice steady. They're going to kill you anyway. The difference is whether you die chained or fighting. The boy nodded, his jaw tight. Serenia's fire Serenia grew stronger, though the cracks in her chitin still bled. Faintly. She tended to the sick with what little energy her healer's glands could muster, glowing faintly in the dark. One night, she whispered to Elias, They broke my people before. On other worlds, the Shaltri were slaves once, long ago. We were freed only because others fought for us. I never thought I would need to fight again. You're not alone this time, Elias said. Her mandibles clicked softly. You humans. You burn so fiercely. Even in chains. He didn't answer. But her words lodged in him like an ember fanned into flame. The spark ignites, the opportunity came during feeding. Guards opened cages row by row, tossing in foul-smelling rations. Captives usually snatched them up like starving animals. But this time, when the door slid open, Elias moved Dot fast, precise. He lunged, jamming a jagged piece of metal tray into the guard's throat. Blood sprayed. Shouts erupted. The other captives froze for a heartbeat then. One by one, they surged. Shackles were torn free, guards overwhelmed by sheer desperation. Screams echoed as years of bottled terror erupted into violence. Serenia's eyes blazed as she ripped a fallen guard's weapon from his hands and fired into the lock of her cage. Energy sizzled. The door swung open. The uprising had begun. Chains. Shatter the corridors of the prison ship became a battlefield. Slaves with scavenged weapons swarmed guards, dragging them down with bare hands and claws. Plasma fire scorched walls. Elias fought at the front, his body moving on instinct. Every strike, every shot, every shout was for Serenia, for the children, for every voice he'd heard begging through static. Korath appeared, roaring with fury, his whip crackling with lethal energy. He cut down prisoners left and right, laughing. Through their screams, You think you can defeat me? He bellowed, I am the Dravari. You are nothing. Elias stepped forward, bloodied but unbroken. Funny, I heard the same from bigger monsters than you. The fight was brutal. Korath's strength was overwhelming, his whip slicing flesh and metal alike. But Elias fought with something the slaver lacked purpose. Every time he fell, he rose again. Every strike he took, he gave back double. Finally, with a roar, Elias drove a stolen blade through Korath's chest. The slaver choked, eyes wide. Before collapsing in a heap of armor and blood Dot, the prisoners erupted in a ragged cheer. Chains clattered to the floor, but their victory was short-lived. Through the shattered bulkheads, Elias saw the stars outside lit with fresh arrivals. Syndicate reinforcements, dozens of ships, closing in fast. They hadn't won. Not yet. They had only lit the fire. Asterisk the fire that spreads. The alarm screamed through the prison ship, a shrill metallic howl that carried across every corridor. The uprising had torn the heart out of the vessel. But now, Syndicate reinforcements poured down from orbit, their ships blotting out the stars. Elias stood on the blood-slicked deck, chest heaving, blade still wet from Korath's death. Around him, freed prisoners clutched stolen weapons, eyes wide with fear and hope in equal measure. Serenia leaned against the bulkhead, scorched but unbowed, her healer's glow dim but steady. "They'll come in force," she rasped. "Hundreds, thousands." Elias's eyes hardened. "Good." Rallying the flames, the corridor stank of smoke. "And death." Elias strode among the prisoners, shouting above the alarms. "You hear that? They think this is over. They think we'll break again. But look around you." He gestured to the fallen guards, the shattered chains. "We killed their master. We tore open their cages. You are free. Do you understand?" "Free." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "But freedom means nothing if we stop here," Elias pressed. His voice grew sharper, harder. "They'll butcher us if we cower. So we fight. Not just for us, for every world they've burned, every family they've taken. We fight until the Syndicate remembers our names." A roar answered him, ragged and fierce. Humans, Shaltri, even the gaunt reptilian slaves from the outer systems, all of them raised their weapons. Serenia stepped forward, her mandibles trembling with fire. "He is right. The Syndicate believes we are cattle. Show them we are not. Show them we are the storm." The fire spread. Hope became fury. Fury became purpose. Asterisk turning the beast, the prison ship groaned under fire from Syndicate reinforcements. Explosions rocked the hull. Elias pointed to the command deck. "We don't run. We take this ship. We make it ours." The words seemed insane. A prison ship was a fortress. But desperation breeds courage. They surged forward. The fighting was brutal. Plasma bolts lit corridors red and blue. Prisoners died in droves, but every fallen body was replaced by two more who refused to stop. Elias led from the front, kicking down blast doors, hurling grenades cobbled together from fuel cells. Serenia followed close, her healer's hands burning. As she sealed wounds in passing, her voice crying orders in Shaltri clicks and human words alike. When they reached the bridge, Syndicate officers fought like cornered beasts. Elias killed the last with his bare hands, slamming its head into the console until bone cracked. The ship was theirs. A broadcast of defiant Serenia limped to the comms array, her carapace glowing faintly. "We can reach the colony," she whispered. Every survivor still hiding. Every captive still in chains on other ships. "We can call them to rise." Elias nodded. "Do it." She activated the wide-band transmitter. Her image, scarred but unbroken, spread across the system. "People of Kiraval," she said, her voice trembling but strong. "This is Serenia, healer of the Shaltri. We are not broken. We are not cattle. Rise, fight, take back your homes." Then Elias pushed her gently aside. His own face filled the broadcast bloodied, eyes burning. "This is Elias Varick of Earth. Humanity has heard your cry. And I promise you this, if the Syndicate wants a war, then a war is what they'll get." Across the colony, hidden groups of survivors stirred. Shackled workers dropped their tools and seized their guards. Forest bands struck Syndicate patrols. Fire spread. The uprising for 3 days. Chaos engulfed Kiraval. The prison ship became a fortress, raining fire on Syndicate landing zones. Colonists surged from hiding, armed with stolen rifles and farm tools turned to weapons. Shaltri swarmed from the trees in ambushes, their blades dripping with Syndicate blood. Elias moved like a shadow through the battles, striking wherever the line faltered, his very presence enough to stiffen spines. Serenia became the soul of the resistance, tending wounds, lifting spirits, whispering words that burned hotter than plasma. But the syndicate was vast. For every patrol they destroyed, another ship landed. For every camp they freed, another was earned that the people were brave. But bravery alone doesn't stop war fleets. Asterisk. The sky burns on the fourth day, the horizon lit with fire. Syndicate reinforcements, an entire fleet dropped into orbit. Their warships blotted out the stars, their engines shaking the ground. Elias watched from a ridge, jaw tight. He could hear the despair ripple through the colonists behind him. Serenia touched his arm, her claws trembling. "We cannot win against this." Elias said nothing. His hand reached into his jacket, fingers brushing against the small, battered transmitter he had hidden since the crash. A device he had sworn never to use again, because if he did, there would be no turning back. Signal that night, when the camp was silent, Elias stood alone in the forest. He activated the transmitter. The light flickered weakly, its signal burning into the void. A code. A call. Not to Kiraval. Not to the colonists. To Earth. Terran Defense Command, Elias whispered into the dark. This is Elias Varric. Colony of Kiraval, under syndicate assault. Thousands enslaved. We've risen, but we won't hold. If you hear this... His voice cracked, then steadied. Then, by God, bring the fleet. Asterisk. The device flickered, its signal weak, but it carried. Somewhere in the vast dark, humanity would hear. And if they came, the galaxy would see what wrath truly meant. Asterisk. Humanity's wrath. The syndicate fleet filled the sky like a storm. Dozens of warships hovered in orbit, their shadows swallowing the light of Kiraval's sun. The ground shook with the thunder of troop landings. The colonists stared upward, in despair. The fire of rebellion flickered, threatened to die. Even the bravest whispered that it was over. Elias stood at the edge of the ridge, eyes fixed on the heavens. His jaw was stone, his chest tight. He had sent the signal. He had broken his promise. But would anyone come? The last stand. The syndicate came at dawn. Waves of armored troops stormed the forest, their plasma fire tearing trees to ash. The colonists fought back with everything they had: bows, rifles, stolen cannons ripped from fallen raiders. The forest burned around them, the air thick with smoke and screams. Serenia fought beside Elias, her healer's hands now wielding a rifle. Her chitin was cracked, her body weak, but her spirit blazed. For every child they stole, she cried, firing into the advancing troops. For every village they burned, the resistance roared with her, but they were breaking. Lines collapsed. Barricades fell. A syndicate dreadnought loomed above the battlefield, its cannons charging. One blast would erase the forest and everyone in it. Elias stared at the sky, teeth clenched so hard they bled. Come on. The answer-thin light. A tear ripped across the heavens, brilliant and sharp. Dozens of ships burst from faster-than-light transit, hulls gleaming with silver and blue. Their banners unfurled in the void. Earth's banners. The Terran Defense Fleet had arrived. The lead vessel, the TDS Resolute, cut across the dreadnought's path, its cannons spitting fire hotter than suns. Plasma lanced into syndicate hulls, ripping them apart. One by one, the warships burned. The sky thundered with humanity's wrath. On the ground, the colonists froze in awe. Then a cheer erupted so loud it drowned even the syndicate guns. Elias felt his knees go weak. He almost laughed, almost cried. They came, he whispered. By God, they came. Fire from the heavens dropped screamed down from orbit. Terran Marines in black and silver armor pouring into the fight. Their rifles cut syndicate troops down like wheat. Push. Elias roared, surging forward with the colonists. Push. Back. This is our world. The battlefield became a storm of vengeance. Humans and Sheltree fought side by side. blades and bullets tearing through slavers who only hours ago thought themselves invincible. The Syndicate dreadnought tried to retreat, but the Resolute split it in half with a single barrage. The explosion lit the sky brighter than dawn. For the first time in living memory, the Dravari Syndicate fled. Aftermath, the forest was ash, the fields blackened, the villages ruins. But the people still stood. Elias walked among the survivors as Terran medics poured in, tending wounds, distributing rations. Children clung to their parents. Shaltri warriors embraced one another. The broken had become whole again. Serenia approached him, her steps unsteady. Her carapace was cracked, her healer's glow faint, but her eyes shone. "You did this," she said softly. Elias shook his head. "No, we did this." She tilted her head, mandibles clicking in something like a smile. "The galaxy will not forget this day. They will remember that when we called for help, humanity came." Elias looked skyward at the burning wreckage of the Syndicate fleet. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of his oath lift. He had promised never to fight again, but some promises were worth breaking, because this wasn't just war. This was a warning. The warning later, aboard the Resolute, Elias stood before the Terran admiral. The man's uniform was immaculate, his voice sharp as a blade. "You lit a fire, Varric. A dangerous one." Elias met his gaze without flinching. "The Syndicate thought they could burn us and get away with it. They were wrong. If they come again, they'll learn what every empire learns sooner or later." "And what is that?" the admiral asked. Elias's voice was low, steady, filled with iron. "That humanity doesn't bow. We burn brighter. We fight harder. And when you hurt the innocent, humanity answers with wrath." The admiral said nothing. But outside the viewport, the wreckage of the Syndicate fleet drifted, silent proof of the words. Epilogue: weeks later, the colony of Caraval began to rebuild. The fields were replanted. Homes rose from ashes. Shaltri songs of mourning turned to songs of defiance. Elias walked the hills at dusk, Serenia at his side. Children ran through the grass, laughter returning to a world that had almost forgotten. He still bore his scars. He always would. But when he looked at Serenia, when he heard the laughter, when he saw the Terran fleet standing guard above, he felt something he thought he'd lost. Hope that the distress call had been a whispering. The dark. But its answer had shaken the stars, and the galaxy would never forget the day humanity's wrath was unleashed. Asterisk.